Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amour de Soi Wellness, and Donovon Jenson is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is Donovan. And today, since it's Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving, if you're listening to this right now, we decided to talk about gratitude. Gratitude is what we talk about around Thanksgiving typically. What are we thankful for? So, Donovan, why don't you kick this off? What are your thoughts about gratitude?
Yeah, so I have had an interesting set of experiences around gratitude, which is to say that at certain times it has been very useful and other times not so much. In terms of when I was younger, I used to occasionally have like at Thanksgiving, right? Times where people would say like, be thankful for this, be thankful for that. And I'm like, this is weird. Like I couldn't produce the feeling, even though I could produce the words, which were enough to satisfy people at that time. So then, over time, as I saw more and more research around just like, you should have a gratitude practice. It's really good for your happiness. It's really going to help a lot. I kept trying different methods or strategies, and I kept running into sort of the same problem. And I think it's because of like my original experience, right? Where I'd just be like, yes, I can produce these words of gratitude, but I wasn't really accustomed to producing the feeling. And I won't ramble on forever, but as I became better at that, and maybe we can dig into this later, but as that became more natural to me and I found ways to tap into that better, I saw a lot of benefits. But it took a while because I had that just sort of that starting point that wasn't really natural or like the types of expression that I wanted to put out. So be curious what you got on your end.
Yeah, no, I can relate to your experience in that. I think there have been times where I'm like, oh, well, just say what you're grateful for. And I wasn't really connected to the words, or it wasn't heartfelt, I guess. I was just saying it to saying it. And obviously I didn't have the benefits of feeling happier from just reiterating words. But when it came from like a heartfelt place, or like I went through an experience and it was a bad experience, but then it had me have gratitude for the times I didn't have those types of experience. I was very thankful for that, and that kind of elicited the more positive feelings. I actually just had a conversation with a client today, and one of the things I want to distinguish today around gratitude, especially when you're in kind of a low place or not feeling great, is to, and yeah, some people use the like, well, just notice all the things that you have to be grateful for, thankful for, and just be happy, kind of like. And that doesn't always work for everyone. It's like if you're in such a dark place where you're feeling it so heavily in your body, I think you can't just think your way out of it. You can't just think like, oh, just think happy thoughts, think grateful thoughts. It doesn't always work. So it's like I recommended to that patient to get more in touch with your body first, before you go to gratitude. And then once you kind of feel a little less stressed in your body, then maybe that might be more beneficial versus trying to like think your way of like, well, I should be happy because I got this and this in my life. And it doesn't always work so well. Yeah.
Yeah, the metaphor that came to mind as you were talking about that is sort of like brushing your teeth, right? Like it's something that's nice and it helps to have gratitude.
Yeah.
But if you have like this huge gaping cavity and like 3 teeth are falling out and whatever else, like there are other concerns that you need to address before, like you can still brush your teeth and it's still going to be good, but it's not going to like resolve some of these really heavy emotional things, like when you're feeling super bummed out or whatever else. It's more, at least in my experience, it's not a solution to those. There's other strategies for sort of resolving even acute, right, feeling down, right, even just a bad day. There are other things that I typically turn to rather than gratitude, but peppering in gratitude is one of these things that I found that doing it at least somewhat consistently just brightens things up a little bit and makes things a little bit nicer. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, I agree that I've had times where, I mean, we did it earlier on in our Happy Talks episodes. I forget what episodes, where we both have expressed in Happy Talks at some point before of how like we've both journaled gratitude, and we both haven't had like the best experience, because it was just like I would write the same things every day, and I'm like, I'm not feeling it. But then when we actually just like freestyled said it to each other, it elicited those happy thoughts. And that kind of reminded me of like, maybe it's just the speaking it. But for me, the thing that I noticed, it's like you almost, and maybe this is kind of like reiterating what I said, but adding a little more flair to what I said previously today, was that, you know, I realize you do have to kind of have those low moments, or not so, those challenges in life, for you to have I feel like when I'm happy and like being more grateful, yeah, that's nice, but you're not really focused on feeling happy when you're being happy. When you're already happy, you're just like you're just there. But when you're in a low point, you want to get happy. And sometimes like it's like going through adversity or challenges is kind of a way for you. Like, I'll give a simple example. Like, yeah, I have gratitude for my health, but usually health isn't an issue for me most of the time. But recently I've been having like this ongoing on and off cough. It's not COVID. I got tested 3 times. Like, I literally got tested again just to be sure. But it's just been like this lingering cough for a month, and it just has me feel. And then I was very grateful. And then I was about to get married and have my wedding and be around people. So that's why I was like extra cautious and tested like multiple times. And I was so grateful to not have COVID, for one. That was something to be grateful for. But also, it made me appreciate how generally I'm a pretty healthy person most of the time. But I had to get sick a little bit for me to remember to be grateful for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this saying often comes into my mind, and I don't know who it's from, but my grandma said it to me when I was a little kid, which was, she basically said, like, you know, a healthy person wants all kinds of different things, and an unhealthy person wants one. And
Yeah.
every single time I'm sick, that comes back into my head, and I'm just like, ugh, I just don't want to feel like garbage anymore.
Right.
And you know, it doesn't last for forever, but once I get on the other side of it, every single time, I feel so grateful for the fact that I'm not dealing with that kind of stuff all the rest of my life.
Right.
And so that also goes back to kind of what we were talking about before, where like, at least for me, finding and really honing in and feeling gratitude often happens in those more neutral or positive places. It's more of like something to sprinkle on top of when things are working out, or at least you know, somewhat okay, or at least there's a comparison point. And it's much harder for me to produce those same feelings when it's like, oh, I'm just having a terrible day. Oh, but at least I'm not, you know, at least I didn't get hit by a car today. And it's like, it just doesn't feel that impactful in those moments for me. Other people may have different experience.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think another thing that kind of like, I have my go-to things that I'm grateful for, like my family, my health, a roof over my head, food on my table, those basic things. But I start to, when I start to just kind of be more connected with other people, and especially people who are struggling and not, or dealing with situations that just don't even occur to me, that has me more grateful for everything that I have in my life, and the struggles that I don't have to deal with based on my current situation. So I'm thankful for that in many ways. And that I think it's just like talking with other people, and I don't know, it's just like talking with about their struggles, or hearing about their struggles, has me more grateful for my own life in many ways.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I was going to bring up as well, which is sometimes it's easy to forget or not see just how many things have fallen in place in my favor. in ways that they couldn't be. And when I talk to other people and hear their stories and look at the things that they've been through, or read about other or whatever, right? There's just so many different ways that experience can unfold, and pretty much everyone has at least some boxes that have fallen like correctly for them or in a nice way that they otherwise wouldn't. But yeah, like you said, seeing the things that other people deal with um, is often very helpful in producing gratitude for me. Another thing that came to mind, which I think I stole this from a Stoic philosopher. I'm not really sure where. I can't quite remember where this idea came from, but it's basically this idea of just getting rid of all the luxuries that you have, or really, really going minimalist, like the littlest thing that you can subsist on for a week, and doing that every once in a while, because it helps fuel gratitude so much to be like, oh wow, actually, I have so many extra things more than what I need to survive. And then, I mean, it also helps that like if at some point in the future you face some hardship, you can get through it. And I think that was more the point. But also, having done that exercise once or twice, it really helps with being like, oh wow, like it is nice to have a dishwasher. It is nice to have all these things that, like, if you just take away all these luxuries, you can produce more of the experience as opposed to just the words. Or at least for me, again, that's something that has been very, very useful.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that it's connected to, like, you don't always appreciate things until it's not there anymore sometimes, which is unfortunate, because we should appreciate. Although sometimes, maybe just hearing other people's stories, like I just said, can elicit that appreciation as well. One of the things my husband does, because he practices gratitude a lot, and he can be a grump on occasion, but how he gets out of being in his grumpiness is like, he's like, this is what I always hear him say. He's like, I have my eyesight, I can walk, I have my back, and like just like these basic functions of life, which is like, yeah, definitely grateful for it. When I can't walk, like on occasion from working out too hard, and maybe I have joint pain and can barely move, I appreciate when I can move. But the fact that I'm not paralyzed is a blessing in itself. I'm very grateful for that sometimes, I'll be honest, I forget to be grateful for until I talk to my friend who's paralyzed. I have a couple, actually, so it has me appreciate like these simple things we don't always think about.
So I'd be curious, sort of in a similar vein, if there are particular exercises you do, or a way that you introduce gratitude more intentionally, or if maybe you did that in the past, maybe we circle back there, or if it's more of a habit now. But I'd just be curious, like, what are some of the things you've done to build more of that?
I think for me, what I've discovered, and I guess everyone might be a little different, because I know people who swear by gratitude journals and all of that. For me, I do know when I'm in like a community circle and we're all sharing what we're grateful for, like around the Thanksgiving table, like it does kind of elicit that. I do appreciate it. Maybe because it's like, being with family, having delicious food, just elicits all those happy responses. So yeah, I'm very grateful. And the fact that we're sharing and we're connecting, I think that elicits more of the happiness outcome for me, compared to just writing in a journal. It doesn't always elicit those feelings as strongly. The other thing that I know is like surmounting like a hardship is like what we just mentioned. Another exercise, I don't do this consistently, but my partner, whenever we attempt to meditate together, he always wants to default to a gratitude meditation. So I'll do a gratitude meditation, and that does kind of is maybe the in between. Like I feel like this is where journaling, writing it down daily, does it for me. For happiness is kind of like on the low end, and then it's like meditation. Yeah, I feel relaxed, I feel grateful, I feel more at peace. Um depending on if it's guided or if it's just simply just being with myself. And then it's like connecting, sharing gratitudes, conversing. For me, it's like the highest level of eliciting happy, positive feelings for me. So I guess it's like multi-leveled for me. And that might be different for other people. I'm not sure.
It does map pretty closely onto the sorts of experience that I've had. So, writing stuff down is like at the very bottom of the list for whatever reason. It doesn't work at all.
Doesn't work for us.
But what I found a lot of success with is just like you were saying, having sort of social components. So I have done both day or night of just talking to someone, like either my family or partner or whoever else, and going through three things that we're grateful for together. And to me, like that has so much more impact when it's sharing with someone else. I also did an exercise for a while around basically writing like a thank you or note of gratitude or something to different people, like once a week or every couple days or whatever else. That also worked really well. It just was more work than just casually doing it with someone in the morning, just a couple quick things. But at the same time, like that exercise of actually writing down and sending stuff to people that I may not talk to all the time was probably one of the strongest in producing gratitude, because I had to go out of my way to think about like, oh, what do I want to tell this person that I'm grateful for? And well, I guess it is self-serving in a way. It still feels even better to actually send it out to someone else. So for me, those are the ones. And then also, like you mentioned, sort of a meditation on gratitude as opposed to writing it out, but actually sitting and really thinking. Those have worked much better than writing. Although still, I think that social component, again, I don't know if it's a universal experience, but it definitely sounds like between the two of us, like that social component makes a big difference.
It does. It really does. Yeah. I think it's because someone's there to receive it and be witness to it, or maybe you're expressing your gratitude for that human being. And then, you get the benefits because then it's their turn and they get to express their gratitude. And actually with the thank you, I just literally today, I sent out the thank you cards for my wedding for everyone that came. And it took a while. It was like getting the cards, getting the pictures, writing it out, because I never write handwritten letters anymore. It was very tiring and taxing on my hand to write it out. It was very tiring, but ultimately I could have just bought in thank you cards that just had a thank you note in it and then just signed my name, and just that would have been way nicer on my hand. But I bought blank ones so I could write personalized message, but then to do it for like 40 times, but it's kind of a lot. But it did feel like I did realize, even though it's a pain on my hand, I do want to, be acknowledging them specifically for the specific thing that I'm grateful for about them, like whether it's they helped out at the wedding in some capacity, or just who they've been for me over the years, how they like flew out from across the country, possibly, like all those things. Like, I want them to feel happy when they open this card, because you don't get a lot of handwritten notes and letters and cards that frequently these days. It's all electronic a lot of the time, so it's a different experience in a way. And yeah, I think it was worthwhile despite my hand pain. yeah.
On a related note, and we can move away from your wedding specifically to the more generic case, but I'd be curious what you think is sort of the distinction between gratitude or doing something like that because you feel like it and you want to, and doing something like that because you feel obligated. And I will talk about something from my past, because when I had my high school graduation, I got a bunch of cards and money from people, and then I don't know what was wrong with me, but I wasn't feeling particularly grateful. But my parents still were basically like, well, you need to write thank you letters. And I remember doing some of the things that you were sort of talking about, which is like trying to pick out details of like, okay, well, if I'm going to do it anyway, then I'll at least customize it to like what I think will make them the happiest.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really producing like the feeling of gratitude that I have now. And again, that may be just because of my original experience with some of these like practices and ideas and it not feeling authentic. But I'd be curious what you see and the differences between when it's more self started as opposed to something you feel obligated to. Because sometimes there's social conventions that say like you should say thanks.
Yeah, honestly, I agree that part of it was the like, oh, well, socially I should, give them thanks because they contributed to my honeymoon fund, or they did something nice, or they just came up here when they didn't have to in the pandemic of all things. So it just was like, initially it was kind of like the pull of like, oh, well, I will feel like an asshole if I don't in a way. So I don't want to look like that, but it did kind of elicit. So it started as that, but I think for me, it transitioned into, as I started the process of writing them and really trying to come from, even though it was like, felt like an obligation in a way, I was like, well, yes, maybe this is custom and standard, but at the same time, I want to get a positive experience out of it. I want to be authentic in my writing, and that's usually where it feels good. If I was writing these letters and I just didn't connect or feel authentic, I would have been like, do I even want to send these out? I don't know. Is it like, do they care? I get like cards. Sometimes I'm like really like touched by it. And sometimes I'm like in the recycling bin, just like a kind of a thing. So I guess my motivation was to, help them feel touched and inspired and good out of the experience. So I put a little more heart into it, and in putting more heart into it, got me to feel happier from the results. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait for them to like open the card and read what I said and just reminisce about like the amazing day that we shared in celebration of our love. And so I think it's like, yeah, maybe sometimes it comes out of obligation, because I know some people might have a gratitude practice at dinner time, like, go around the table, not just for Thanksgiving, or maybe even at Thanksgiving, people are like, oh, I don't want to, this is, I don't feel like it. Why do we have to do this? And they're grumbling about it. But I think if you can grumble about it, but like, when you actually do it, you can choose to be grumbly still, or or you can choose to be authentic. And it's like, well, if it's something I have to do regardless, I can choose how I want to go about it. So I'm going to choose to be authentic and be real. So we can all benefit from it. I want it to come from a genuine place. And so in that respect, I think you can be intentional, whether it's a have to or not, you can be intentional with that process.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if comparing against my 17-year-old grumpy self is a fair
I know, you're teen.
person, right? That's not
right. Everything feels like a have to when you're a teenager.
But that kind of mirrors sort of the evolution that I went through as well, in terms of at some point I must have realized, I don't remember this, but at some point I must have realized like some of these things I have to do anyway. So I might as well find the most authentic and real way to do this. And then with more of those experiences came a lot easier sense of tapping into that, as opposed to fighting sort of like this, oh, I have to do it just because I have to do it. Like, that's so stupid. 17-year-old me in full force. But so yeah, that maps on to sort of my experience. And another piece of what you were saying is I found, especially now that I'm not a little shit, once I start doing some of the practices, a lot of times I get into a better position. And a couple things that have helped me, or at least that I've developed over time, like you sort of mentioned this, like thinking about the impact that it's going to have on the other person, as well as when I'm trying to feel more grateful, sometimes thinking about what the other person had to do to produce whatever useful or helpful thing for me, really helps a lot. If I think right now about getting, some amount of money from my grandparents or something, and then I think about it in terms of like, well, how long did my grandma or grandpa or whatever have to work to earn that much money to give it to me? Like how much time did they put in, and sort of following the trail a couple steps further, or just making it more concrete, has really helped me a lot to be able to produce the feeling. Whereas, like I mentioned, when I was younger, it'd be like $20, like that. Cool, I guess. Like, what am I supposed to do with $20?
Yeah.
So those are just a couple pieces that helped me, because for me, like, this has very, very, very much been a journey to appropriately feel and produce gratitude.
That just reminded me of, I think, and I can't generalize to our young people of today, generation Z, I guess. Is it Gen Z? Just like, I think a lot of people, older people, and maybe in my age range or and above, might think that the Gen Z generation might seem entitled. And maybe they think that of my generation. I've heard it plenty of times of millennials feeling entitled, and that's very true. And for some, not all. But I think maybe it's partly in that, yeah, they definitely have experiences that our parents, or conveniences that our parents never had, like phones and internet and things like that, which are remarkable things when you think about, like, the power of the internet is a pretty impressive thing when you lived in a time where there wasn't internet. It's a pretty thing to appreciate. But I guess perhaps because those younger people that are entitled and are suffering more, I think are culturally, maybe more people are suffering. Oh, I don't know. I can't really say for sure. I need to look at the stats, and maybe it's hard to get the stats of, like, more people are depressed and anxious compared to older generations. I don't know. This is true. Absolutely. With that, it might be, they're always wanting more. They're always, again, not to gross generalization, but just kind of like for some Gen Zs, because they're always wanting more. There's never enough of stuff that they want, and then they don't have the experience of taking everything away to really be grateful for. Like, it's always like, I need more stuff. I need more stuff to prove that I'm, like, a cool person or a worthy person. I need like amazing Instagram pics, things like that, versus like, hey, you don't need all of that. You don't need all this stuff to validate who you are. And when you can kind of get away from that, that leads to more happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll see if I can.
No, it was convoluted all over the place.
I have some thoughts on it though, and you can tell me if you disagree, or if I misrepresented you. But I think a big piece of it is not necessarily a particular generation, but it's sort of this growth of experience, right? As you get older and you experience more and more different types of things, and are responsible for more and more different types of things.
Yeah.
So you end up with, for example, I know I had a very small handful of people who were given enough wealth to be able to pursue anything they want for the rest of their life.
Right.
And those same sorts of people don't have the experience yet, or may never, of something like, here's what it's like to work for minimum wage. Here's what your paycheck looks like after you've worked 40 hours at minimum wage. Here's how much rent costs relative to that when that's what you make. And so I think, the younger people, just in general, not this particular generation, but just, as you get older, you get more and more responsibility and less help. And you start to see more and more of those gaps, kind of like what you were talking about, where you don't have things. Right. So it's very easy when you take having a place to live and food as granted, where you just go like, oh, well, now I want, like, oh, you guys gave me a car, but this is not a good car. I want a better car.
Right. Yeah.
Right. until you realize like, or see, and it goes back to kind of what I was talking about before in the ways that have helped me produce gratitude. But when it's like, do you have any idea how many hours you have to work at minimum wage to get any car?
Yeah.
Like, so, and I think as people age up, they get more and more experiences that kind of, in general, not always, right? Some people get stuck in this trap forever and they never figure it out. But you get more and more experiences that allow you to see, if you are open to it, sort of these positive and negative things or things to be grateful for, as well as you get some of those things, right? Because I can remember times when I was younger that I was striving for particular things and like, oh, I really need this because it's going to be so cool and whatever. And then actually experiencing the amount of happiness it brings and being like, I feel pretty much the same. Like nothing has really changed. Or like, you know, like this was the coolest thing for like a week or a month, and then it completely wore off. And now it's just back to baseline. So maybe I need to work on the baseline as opposed to trying to get a brand new sports car or whatever else. Again, there are fully grown people well into their old age that are still playing this game. But I think that might be why you see some of the, or, you know, it's some of these feelings of like, oh, whatever the younger generation is entitled. And that might actually be true just because a lot of them haven't had experiences that have kind of shocked them into reality or put them in a place where they're like, oh, I guess I should actually just be really grateful for these things. Now, whether or not this is scientifically backed, whether or not the numbers support this, stats, like this is all just out of my brain. I could be completely wrong. There could be some numbers that are like, what are you talking about? But that's one plausible reading that I have of it, or at least something that I have seen in my life and nerd in many of the people that I know's lives. And why, like over time, it seems like people, or at least some percentage of the group, is able to increase the amount that they're grateful.
Yeah, no, you explained that so beautifully compared to how I went about it. But yeah, I think that is a lot of people's experience in that, you know, reflecting on just on my own personal life, and that I've built gratitude over the years through my experience. Like, yeah, I feel like I was probably that ungrateful teenager too, even though I'm very fortunate now realizing, yeah, I had a roof over my head. We didn't live lavishly by any means. We rarely ever even went out for dinner. We were generally cooking, which I'm grateful for because it made me learn like healthier eating habits of eating in and cooking for ourselves. But yeah, I didn't have that appreciation, and I did, even though I started working at like the age of 15. But it was like that money wasn't to like pay for my basic living needs. It was for like extra stuff of cool things I want. And I was actually just having this conversation with my partner last night about like, you know, how we want to raise our children. And I was saying, you know, if they want a car, you know, of course we'll cover their basic living expenses. But if they want a car, my thought is that I want them to, like, I'll pay for half of it, but then they have to earn the rest by working. So they understand the hard work that it takes to it. It's not like all in, I'll contribute. But then I was just like reflecting back. I'm like, oh, you know what? My dad gave me his car. I didn't have to, but I did work from a teenager. But I don't think I was like spoiled or really entitled. But looking back, I realized that I didn't have gratitude for things like that until I became an adult and had to, you know, provide for myself essentially, and go through those hardships of life and paying for my car insurance. And actually my dad paid for my car insurance until I was like in my mid-20s probably. So I was in college. And yeah, but no, it does have me appreciate everything that I have to be grateful for with my parents. And then the other thing that I didn't realize I could be grateful for, kind of tying back to what we talked about earlier, was just hearing other people's experience. Me hearing my parents' experience growing up, their Asian immigrants. My mother lived in Vietnam, even though we're Chinese heritage. It wasn't that crazy to have like bombs going off outside your home in Vietnam. And I was like, I am so spoiled compared to that. I don't have to worry about my safety growing up, which it was like, it wouldn't have occurred to me until I heard that story. So things like that.
Yeah, and I think that tacks on to what I was talking about before, which is like you get also more, not just personal experiences, but you get more stories and more understanding of other people's experience.
Right.
And, like when you're in high school, who do you really know? Or like, what do you really know about? Not that many people, or even college. Like,
talking to your friends that are also your age.
Yeah. So like continues to sort of expand. And when you're talking about cars, it reminded me of my experience and one pivotal point in me developing gratitude, which was my dad. He didn't give me the car, but he had another car that I could use when I was, 16. And I got in a wreck and totaled that car. And we didn't have like a ton of money at the time. So he was like, cool. If you want a car now, you have to earn it. You have to go work. You have to work for me, because he was like working on his business and stuff. Like, you have to work for me and you have to earn it. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And I worked the whole summer so much. Like, I don't know, because maybe in my teenager brain, I was working like 20 hours a week, and I was like, oh no, I don't know. Like, yeah. I'm not sure how much it actually was. But I remember being like, this is the hardest I've ever worked by a huge margin. And then at the end of the summer, I went and looked at, some used cars and stuff. And it was like, I couldn't even afford anything. Like, my dad still helped me cover some of it. And the car that I got, compared to what I was driving, not that other car was like super, super nice or anything, but the one that I got was horrible. Horrible. Like the junkiest. I have so many stories about that car that we don't have time for, but horrible. I will say that the end of that car was, I was driving on the highway. Smoke started coming out from under, like where the gas pedals are and stuff, out from under there and the hood. And when I got out, it was on fire, and I just left and never looked back. But anyway, this is a side tangent. The point is, that was one of the pivotal moments that took me from sort of this more entitled, like I have a car to drive because I get a car, because everybody gets a car around here, to like, a car's not that easy. Like, I had to work for this a lot, and it was a lot of effort. And I still have like a garbage car that is not safe at all. And wow, like my dad just gave me this other car to drive around. Like, he didn't, again, he'd give it to me, but like, oh, like maybe there's more going on than I'm paying attention to. So just tying back into, I think you get more experiences and more chances to see like, oh, other people are actually like working extremely hard or whatever else. And it's easier to produce some gratitude.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anyways, well, I think we covered this topic pretty well. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
The one thing that I want to throw out is that, just if someone has had an experience kind of like mine, I don't know how common it is, but I really kind of recoiled against like the word gratitude and finding the feeling and just figuring it out for such a long time. But it is such a useful and mutually beneficial thing, right? Showing gratitude is a really good way to make other people feel good as with yourself. So it's worth continuing to work at and try different strategies. It's not just this journal. It's not just saying something that you have no feeling for. There are a lot of different ways to try and produce the feeling. And it's definitely something that contributes quite a bit to quality of life. So it's worth doing, even if you haven't always been able to tap into that.
Yeah. Actually, that just made me think of like the final thing, like just another tool to throw out there to consider if you want to build your gratitude practice. As we kind of just discussed, like hearing about other people's experience and what they've had to go through will help you feel more grateful for what you do have. So it's like, maybe just talk to more people, get people's stories, realize what else is out there in the world, expand yourself, and you'll have more gratitude. Or just start to hear other people's what they're grateful for, and it just gives you more ideas of other things that you might not have thought of to be grateful for. So I'd add that in. But yes, so that wraps up today's episode. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving, or whenever you're tuning into this. Just be grateful. Maybe practice that at the dinner table or with some friends. Doesn't even have to be at dinner. Anytime, any place. Find a way. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and then go and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you get notified when the next video comes out. If you check out in the description below, go to my website where you can get my free fast and easy guide to stress relief. Thanks again for checking us out, and we'll see you next time.